The only way to get rid of a certain thought is to substitute another one for it. You cannot dismiss a thought directly. Nearly a century ago, Emmet Fox documented this unyielding mechanical law of the mind, speaking directly to the silent panic that grips your chest on nights identical to tonight. You lie there in the dark, watching the artificial glow of your smartphone cast pale shadows across the ceiling, staring at a banking notification that feels less like a simple number and more like a permanent sentence. Or perhaps you feel that heavy throbbing behind your forehead after surviving another 2 hours of slow-moving highway traffic, mentally rehearsing a confrontational dialogue for tomorrow. The walls of your schedule seem to contract around your sternum, and every nerve in your nervous system is screaming at you to fight back. Your environment has trained you to believe that survival requires brute grit, that you must clench your jaw and forcefully smash through the concrete barriers of your circumstances. But the bone-deep weariness pinning your frame to your mattress right now is not evidence that you are failing at the battle of existence. It is the absolute symptom of trying to wage a spiritual war with primitive tools. The human intellect, captured by survival panic, operates under the tragic illusion of brute force. You convince yourself that running your crisis through your mind 500 times before midnight is somehow the responsible work of problem solving. In the revolutionary pages Fox compiled during the turbulent decades of the 20th century, he mapped out an immutable law. Your physical reality is merely the printed receipt of your inner equivalent. Whenever you fiercely contemplate the sheer size of your debt or the injustice of your workplace, you actively command the creative machinery of the universe to manufacture those exact conditions. You pour your sacred vitality directly into the mold of your own terror. You cannot clear the darkness out of a room by beating the air with a stick. You simply switch on the lamp, and the darkness instantly vanishes. Your agonizing struggle to fix your life by sheer will is precisely what holds your deadbolts locked. Picture a master woodworker in a damp London workshop during the bitter winter of 1920. He must carve an intricate joint into dense, aged oak. If he takes a dull chisel and a heavy mallet, violently striking the wood with all his physical strength, he achieves only one result. He splinters the timber and shatters the bones in his hands. The oak remains stubborn. But the true artisan does not waste a single drop of sweat fighting the mechanical resistance of the wood. He sets his heavy tools down, walks over to his grinding stone, and quietly sharpens a blade. He does not scream at the oak to yield. He merely aligns the sharp edge with the natural grain and applies a steady, effortless pressure. Without violence, the dense wood curls away in perfect ribbons. That very material that resisted his brute strength now yields to the quiet application of correct mechanical law. As your body bears the quiet weight of your routine at this exact second, whether your hands are gripping a steering wheel, folding laundry, or whether your spine is supported motionless by the mattress beneath you, simply notice where your attention is anchored. Do not attempt to forcefully quiet your thoughts. Just passively observe how you have spent the last several days acting like that panicked woodworker, pressing your fragile nervous system against the crushing grain of your circumstances, trying to force your life to change with the sheer violence of your worry. Without altering your posture by a fraction of an inch, recognize the profound mechanical truth. Your willpower is fundamentally inadequate to bend reality by force. Your only function is to step away from the heavy mallet and quietly apply the law of substitution. Yet there is a dangerous psychological trap that captures the vast majority of people the very first time they attempt to execute this mental pivot. When they try to forcefully detach their gaze from the problem, they commit a subtle technical error, a misstep that instantly converts their attempt at spiritual alignment into a brand new fuel for their own panic. The exact anatomy of this invisible self-sabotage is what we will dismantle next. You cannot get rid of a negative thought by fighting it. You must replace it by a positive one. This is the law of substitution. In his foundational lectures, Emmet Fox repeatedly emphasized this absolute mechanical law, speaking directly to the agonizing loops that hijack your nervous system tonight. You sit parked in your driveway, the engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel. You stare blankly, endlessly replaying a bitter argument or anticipating a humiliating financial setback. A voice inside your head desperately commands you to stop thinking about it. You aggressively try to evict the anxiety, clenching your jaw, actively wrestling with the shadows of your own imagination. Yet every time you attempt to push the fear away through sheer willpower, it returns within seconds, striking your chest with triple its original intensity. Your culture conditioned you to believe that if a thought torments you, you must go to war with it, completely failing to realize that this internal combat is exactly what keeps the nightmare alive. The subconscious architecture of the mind is entirely incapable of processing the concept of negation. It does not understand the command to not do something. It only registers the focal point of your emotional attention. When you spend 2 hours aggressively trying not to think about your debt, you force your internal machinery to deeply concentrate on the exact shape and terror of that debt. Fox warned that trying to eradicate a dark mental habit through brute will is the spiritual equivalent of trying to hold back a compressed steel spring with your bare thumbs. You may keep it pinned down for a few agonizing minutes, but the millisecond your emotional fatigue overcomes you, the spring rebounds with devastating velocity. True metaphysical liberation requires absolutely zero combat. You do not wage war against the shadows of your circumstances. You quietly apply the cold, scientific law of substitution, shifting your mental equivalent so the lower frequency starves to death from neglect. Consider the silent, relentless biological mechanics of a tiny seed buried beneath the freezing, compacted earth during winter. That seed is surrounded by absolute darkness, trapped under rigid soil and mud. If it possessed a frantic human intellect, it would spend all its energy raging against the dirt, violently attempting to push the heavy earth away through sheer strain. It would exhaust its vital reserves, fighting a war it could never win. But the intelligence of nature operates without violence. The seed simply rests in the dark and quietly absorbs the moisture around it. It does not fight the soil. It focuses entirely on its own internal expansion. As the cellular structure swells, it exerts a slow, continuous, hydrostatic pressure that is mathematically stronger than concrete. Without a single sound, the fragile shoot pushes straight through the compacted earth, effortlessly displacing the dirt simply by occupying the space with new life. As your physical frame continues to bear the quiet weight of this exact moment, whether your eyes are scanning the shadows of your room or your hands are casually resting in your lap, simply notice the striking resemblance between that frantic struggle and your own daily habits. Do not attempt to forcefully alter your breathing pattern right now. Just passively observe how much of your sacred vitality you have wasted this week trying to fight the heavy dirt of your circumstances. Notice the immediate wave of cellular relief that washes down your spine the instant you recognize that you are strictly forbidden from fighting the problem. You do not have to battle the heavy earth of your crisis tonight. Your only cosmic responsibility is to quietly absorb a higher frequency. Yet when most people finally stop fighting the dirt and attempt to let the new thought grow, they are suddenly hijacked by a fierce, almost invisible emotional ghost. They experience a strange, bitter sense of cosmic injustice, a deeply rooted feeling that the universe owes them suffering, which secretly sabotages the new seed before it breaks the surface. This hidden emotional poison traces back to a specific, universal memory from our early years, and exactly how to permanently neutralize this psychological trap without a fight is what we will dismantle next. What you think upon grows. This is an Eastern maxim, and it neatly summarizes the greatest and most fundamental of all the laws of mind. Writing in the early 20th century, Emmet Fox laid down this timeless observation to address the exact silent agony that consumes you tonight. You lie awake at the midnight hour, staring into the dark, completely gripped by a profound sense of unfairness. You meticulously review the exact words of a conversation where your intentions were misunderstood, or you mentally calculate the burden of a financial setback caused by someone else's negligence. Your chest tightens with the bitter, metallic taste of injustice. Every modern survival instinct tells you that you must aggressively defend your position, that you must relentlessly analyze the unfairness of your situation until you figure out how to force reality to apologize to you. But this exhausting mental courtroom you run in the dark is not bringing you closer to a solution. It is actively manufacturing the exact conditions of your continuous defeat. The human intellect, when bruised by circumstance, operates under the tragic illusion that rumination is a form of self-defense. You genuinely believe that if you aggressively focus on how wrong your circumstances are, you will somehow gather enough willpower to break through them. In the precise psychological frameworks established by Fox, this is the ultimate trap of the mental equivalent. By fighting the injustice in your mind, you are actively supplying it with the high-voltage electricity of your own attention. You are taking your sacred, creative vitality and pouring it directly into the mold of your own victimization. The law of substitution cannot be activated while your hands are clenched into fists, fiercely holding on to the evidence of your suffering. You cannot replace a dark thought with a light one while simultaneously insisting on proving how dark the room really is. Travel backward for a moment and step into a faded, universal archive of your own childhood. You were perhaps 11 or 12 years old, standing in the hallway of your home or sitting at a wooden school desk, burning with the sudden, agonizing sting of a profound injustice. Perhaps you were falsely accused of an action you did not commit, or you were arbitrarily denied something you had desperately earned, while someone else was rewarded without merit. You retreated to the solitary confines of your bedroom, slammed the door shut, and threw yourself onto the mattress. Do you remember the sheer, suffocating heat of that anger? The absolute certainty that the entire architecture of the universe was rigged against you? You laid there for hours, aggressively replaying the scene in your mind. You thought of all the perfect, devastating arguments you should have spoken aloud. You imagined dramatic scenarios where your innocence would be proven and your oppressors would be forced to weep in regret. And the harder you fought to correct that injustice within the theater of your own mind, the more violently your stomach ached. You were attempting to erase the pain by diving directly into its epicenter, completely unaware that by obsessively chewing on the bitter root of that memory, you were paralyzing your own nervous system. The external event had ended hours ago, but you were keeping the wound violently open through the sheer brute force of your focused attention. As your physical frame continues to navigate the quiet reality of this exact second, whether your eyes are casually scanning the road ahead of you or your hands are performing a mundane household chore, simply observe the striking, undeniable resemblance between that helpless 12-year-old on the bedroom floor and the exhausted adult you are tonight. Without altering your breathing pattern and without attempting to forcefully forgive anyone who has wronged you this week, passively notice how you're still gripping the broken pieces of adult injustices. You're still slamming the mental door, demanding that the universe recognize your pain before you grant yourself permission to heal. Without shifting your physical posture by a single fraction of an inch, recognize the profound, cellular relief that floods your chest the instant you realize that you do not have to prove your innocence to the cosmos tonight. The law of substitution does not require you to win the argument. It only requires you to drop the burning coal. You are cosmically authorized to simply release the agonizing need for the external world to be fair, allowing your attention to gently pivot toward the quiet power of the absolute. Yet, there is a severe historical misconception about this exact pivot. When people finally attempt to drop their grievances and turn their attention toward the absolute, They often try to use prayer as a bargaining chip, desperately pleading with the divine to fix the unfairness they just swore to release. This creates a catastrophic spiritual short circuit, exactly how Emmet Fox taught thousands of destitute individuals to bypass this trap entirely during the darkest economic collapse in human history is the precise mechanism we will dismantle next. The only way to get rid of a certain thought is to substitute another one for it. You cannot dismiss a thought directly. In his 1934 masterwork, Power Through Constructive Thinking, Emmet Fox documented this precise psychological law, speaking directly to the exhaustion you feel when your mind turns into a cage of repeating stressful loops. You are currently navigating a reality where your nervous system has been conditioned to treat every crisis, a looming deadline, an unpaid invoice, or a sharp, critical remark from a supervisor, as a predator chasing you through the brush. You lie in bed at night or sit at your desk in the middle of a draining workday and try to use your willpower to stop the fear. You forcefully command yourself to stop worrying about your finances, stop obsessing over your failing relationship, or stop anticipating the worst-case scenario. Yet the more intensity you use to suppress these thoughts, the more they swarm back into your consciousness, fueled by the very energy you're using to push them away. You are effectively trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you push it down, the more violent its eventual recoil. Your exhaustion stems from this futile, constant wrestling match, unaware that the human subconscious does not recognize the command "stop" as a direction. It only recognizes the object of your intense, focused attention. The mechanical reality of the human mind is that it functions as a generator, not a vacuum. It is physically impossible for the mind to remain blank, and it is equally impossible for it to truly empty itself of a thought through sheer suppression. This is the tragic error that drives thousands of individuals into clinical burnout. They believe that the act of worrying is preparing for the problem, when in truth, it is the act of anchoring the problem into your physical experience. By obsessing over the injustice or the lack, you are inadvertently performing a continuous act of prayer, calling the very thing you fear into your personal reality with surgical precision. Emmet Fox argued that we are always praying. The only difference is that most of us are unknowingly praying for the continuation of our own misery. You do not need to fight the dark room to bring in the light. You simply need to move your hand toward the switch. You do not need to tear out the weeds from your garden with your bare hands, scratching your skin in the process. You simply plant the seeds of a new crop, and the inevitable expansion of the new growth will naturally starve the weeds of the sunlight they need to survive. Consider the precise, silent mechanics of a large industrial reservoir being cleared of sediment. When a lake bed becomes clogged with years of silt and debris, the engineers do not send a team of men down with shovels to manually fight the mud. That approach would take decades, and the men would only be buried by the very sludge they were trying to remove. Instead, the engineers open the upper sluice gates of the dam to allow a fresh, high-velocity current of pure, clean mountain water to pour into the reservoir. As this torrent of fresh water enters the system, it naturally increases the pressure and movement within the lake. The heavy, stagnant silt at the bottom is churned up and carried away by the powerful current, leaving the bed clean, not because the engineers fought the mud, but because they replaced the stagnant water with a flow that simply had no room for debris. The mud was not removed by combat. It was displaced by the arrival of something stronger, purer, and more active. As your physical frame continues to navigate the quiet demands of this moment, whether your attention is drifting through the space of the room you currently occupy or your body is resting in its current position, simply notice the residual strain across your jaw and the base of your skull. Do not attempt to forcefully relax those muscles. Just passively observe how much energy you have been wasting this week trying to shovel the mud of your problems through mental frustration. Without shifting your posture by a single millimeter, recognize the profound mechanical relief that floods your chest the instant you accept that you do not have to fight your negative thoughts. you are strictly forbidden from wrestling with your own mind. Your only role is to gently introduce a new, higher frequency of thought, allowing the law of substitution to naturally displace the stagnant debris of your worry. Yet there is a profound metaphysical error that the vast majority of people make when they finally attempt this pivot. When they try to replace their dark thoughts with something positive, they often engage in a false, superficial optimism that acts like a coat of paint over a crumbling foundation, eventually leading to a spiritual collapse that leaves them more vulnerable than before. The precise mechanical anatomy of why positive thinking often fails and how to execute a substitution that actually changes the atomic structure of your reality is what we will dismantle next. The real trouble with all of us is that we are trying to do it by willpower. We are trying to make it happen instead of letting it happen. Nearly a century ago, Emmet Fox articulated this specific mechanical warning, speaking directly to the exhaustion that currently defines your existence. You sit in your vehicle, the engine idling, or you stand before your kitchen sink, staring at the porcelain with eyes that feel as though they are filled with sand. You have spent your entire day in a state of high alert, muscular contraction, treating every minor obstacle, a delayed project, an unread message, a mounting debt, as a lethal threat requiring your direct, violent intervention. You are convinced that if you stop holding up the structure of your life for even a single second, it will spontaneously collapse into ruin. You are currently operating under the exhausting, primitive delusion that you are the primary architect of your own destiny, and therefore you are responsible for every single mechanical detail of its maintenance. But the heavy, dull ache settling into your shoulders right now is the biological evidence that you were never designed to hold the weight of the world. You were designed to be the conduit for the power that moves it. This reliance on willpower is the exact mechanism that causes your current crisis to harden into a permanent reality. When you use your human intellect to forcefully try to solve a problem, you are unconsciously declaring that the problem is a fixed, immovable fact that can only be altered by your personal exertion. You have made the difficulty the center of your universe, and by the immutable law of the mental equivalent, you are effectively tethering your nervous system to the very frequency of your distress. Fox frequently described this state as the frantic worker's disease, where the ego becomes so obsessed with its own labor that it forgets the source of the work. You are struggling not because your challenge is insurmountable, but because you are attempting to solve it from within the frequency of the challenge itself. You are trying to use the same logic that created the prison to build the key, an impossibility that is currently consuming every ounce of your psychic vitality. Consider the biological architecture of a single, resilient pine tree perched precariously upon the exposed granite cliffside of a high mountain range. Throughout the long, freezing winter, that tree is subjected to wind speeds that would snap reinforced steel and temperatures that turn sap into ice. If that tree attempted to survive by willpower, if it tried to forcefully harden its branches against the gale, or if it attempted to hold its needles in place through muscular contraction, it would shatter instantly under the pressure. It does not exert force. It does not fight the wind. Instead, the tree survives through a total, passive submission to the environment. It allows its branches to bend, yielding to the path of least resistance, while its deep, invisible roots anchor themselves into the unseen crevices of the rock, drawing nourishment from a source completely hidden from the view of the surface. It is precisely because the tree does not attempt to make the storm stop that it remains standing when the gale finally subsides. As your physical frame continues to navigate the quiet, mundane demands of this exact moment, whether your hands are resting on a steering wheel or you're simply sitting in the stillness of your own home, simply notice how much effort you are currently expending just to be. Without attempting to force a change in your circumstances and without trying to think your way out of your anxiety, passively observe the tension you are holding in your jaw, your stomach, and your lower back. You are holding your breath, waiting for the world to confirm your safety. Recognize in this singular moment the profound cellular permission you are granting yourself to finally stop the frantic labor. You do not have to try to be healed. You do not have to try to be successful. Your only cosmic responsibility is to mirror the silent, effortless intelligence of the tree, anchoring your attention in the invisible source and letting the outer reality adjust itself to match your inner state. But there is a final, critical barrier that often prevents this surrender from becoming a permanent state of mind. People frequently fear that if they stop trying, they will lose their edge. They will be overtaken by the chaos, or they will simply cease to exist as effective human beings. This fear of letting go is the final defensive measure of the ego, a deceptive thought form that ensures you stay trapped in the loop of your own exhaustion. The precise mechanical anatomy of why this surrender is actually the highest form of peak performance and how it results in a total dissolution of your remaining ego resistance is what we will dismantle in the final chapter of this series. You do not have to struggle to reach your goal. You only have to hold your mental image of it firmly, and the law will take care of the rest. In this final movement of your mental realignment, we arrive at the absolute point of surrender that Emmet Fox identified as the Great Release. You have spent your entire life believing that the material world is a giant, unresponsive object that you must forcefully manipulate through sweat, strategy, and constant worry. You have lived in the exhausting low-frequency state of a laborer attempting to build a cathedral with a blunt spoon. Tonight, you stand at the final threshold of this understanding. You have realized that fighting the darkroom does not produce light and that aggressively policing your own anxiety only anchors the frequency of that anxiety into your nervous system. Now you must execute the final command of the Law of Substitution, the total, permanent abandonment of the struggle to make the universe respond to your will. The final secret, which keeps the vast majority of people trapped in their cycles of limitation, is the fear that if they stop their internal combat, they will become powerless. They confuse surrender with resignation. But in the mechanics of scientific prayer, surrender is not a passive defeat. It is the most aggressive act of authority you can perform. When you stop trying to fix the cracks in your reality through brute force, you're not giving up. You are simply stepping out of the way so that the natural, infinite pressure of the universe can flow into the vacuum you created. You are shifting from the role of the exhausted laborer to the role of the master engineer who simply turns the valve. The law of substitution is not something you do. It is something you allow. Consider the final, elegant simplicity of a magnetic compass placed near a powerful, concealed source of energy. As long as you attempt to twist the compass needle with your fingers to make it point in a direction you prefer, you are creating friction, heat, and distortion. You are fighting the very nature of the magnetism that is intended to guide you. But the moment you remove your hand, the moment you stop trying to make the needle point toward your desired outcome, the needle naturally, instantly, and with absolute precision swings to align itself with the true north of the field. It does not require a struggle. It requires only the cessation of your interference. Your life is not a puzzle you must solve through intellectual strain. It is a magnetic field that is already perfectly aligned with your highest potential. You have been the only element causing the needle to spin in circles. As your physical frame rests in this final moment of our exploration, whether you are reading these words in the quiet of your home or reflecting on them amidst the movement of your day, simply notice the absolute silence that fills the space where your panic used to be. Do not try to hold on to this feeling. Do not try to analyze why it works. Just acknowledge that the heavy, crushing weight you have been carrying was entirely self-manufactured. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are the architect of your own mental equivalent. You are free to drop the heavy hammer. You are free to stop the internal trial. You are free to simply exist in the quiet authority of the Absolute. Your crisis is not a wall. It is a veil. The second you pivot your attention toward the light, the veil loses its ability to obscure your vision. You have the law, you have the method, and you have the permission to finally rest in the certainty that the work is already done. The darkness was never real. The struggle was never necessary. You are already exactly where you need to be, and the universe is already moving to harmonize with your new, unwavering mental image. Go forth with the cold, scientific confidence of one who knows how the gears of the world turn. The process is complete. The substitution is permanent. You are finally and irrevocably in command.